Hello, hello. Welcome back, my friends. How you doing today? We're here. We're here. I'm watching the end of this Liverpool Spurs game as well. Been an interesting one, no doubt about that. Kind of a fun one in the sense of the chaos with Spurs being down to 10 for such a long time and Liverpool being Liverpool, and it's close. Spurs look more likely recently. But yes, quite a few things to talk about today. Obviously, I want to speak a little bit more about Semenyo, get some feelings on that whole thing. What are we thinking today? Obviously, it's the weekend. With games on, usually not much is happening in these few days. I suspect we'll start to hear more again on Monday, Tuesday, following all of the game week rounds and when we play, because people are generally busy prepping for the games and things like that. So I don't think we're going to hear much by way of Semenyo right now. Now, I am interested to see as well. There's a report from someone from the Times about Baleba that's very interesting to me. And certainly interesting in a sense that it potentially puts a damper on the idea that we could get him right now. But it also just sort of tells me, it also kind of tells me, is Romero getting himself sent off? Sorry. It also tells me that perhaps Brighton are making it really difficult for Baleba here, which I wouldn't say he wants. Has Romero just been sent off? One sec, guys. Sorry, I'm just trying to understand what happened. Oh, yeah, he just kicked him. He's going to get sent off, isn't he? Anyway, what a moron. He's got a yellow, and that's a second yellow, and now he's off the pitch, Romero. So they're down to 9 players. What an idiot. Spurs are just... Spurs, man. Spurs are just Spurs. And that pretty much probably ends the chances of any comeback here. The self-destruction is unbelievable. Romero is such a joke. But yeah, we're going to talk about Brighton and Baleba a little bit. We'll talk about the Villa game, the potential that there could be some youth. There could be some youth. Obviously, well, there will be youth included in the squad. Obviously, we know potentially not on the pitch. But who could be in the squad, I think, makes for some interesting names. There's a few names going around right now. Could we see the return of Bendito Mentato? There's some rumors. Oof, decent free kick, though. There's some rumors at the moment about Mentato that it might be time, with obviously United missing wide players. And then I want to also discuss as well, this midfielder names, because I made a hint at one yesterday, and I want to give that name now, which I think I think I fooled a lot of people with one of the suggestions that I made there. So we'll talk about that. But I will give you a name today. And I believe it's a name we haven't heard before. I'll be honest. I don't know how likely this name is, but I will give you a name that we have not seen in reports as of yet that I did hint at yesterday. So we'll talk about that. So where did we want to start? We want to start with Semenyo. Yeah, a lot of players taking Christmas off right now. We want to start with Semenyo, okay? Obviously, Semenyo scores another goal here against today for Bournemouth. Really good goal as well, and just really impressed. Every time I watch him, I'm just more and more impressed with the type of player that Semenyo is, and that we should get him. Again, as I was saying before, obviously we're not likely to be getting, somebody. We're not likely to be getting any kind of news right now in terms of Semenyo, because again, the games are on and everybody's traveling, and United's hierarchy and executives tend to come with them, and a lot of times it slows down around the weekend, and then it'll pick up again. But I think we've got a serious chance, and we've seen some reporting now as well that Tottenham are out of the race. And if you look at Tottenham, you'd be nuts to join them. I mean, we might have our issues in the chaos that we are in terms of building up, but when you watch Tottenham, who's going to join these guys willingly? You know what I mean? Who's going to join these guys willingly? They are just such a mess in general. And obviously it's just in everything, Tottenham, just endless mediocrity forever, even more so than us. They're like kind of like the B version of us. They run poorly. They recruit kind of mediocrely, and it is what it is. But, yeah, it was interesting. Someone posted this. Someone mentioned this above. Did you watch Semenyo on Classic Football Shirts? He spoke about Calvin Phillips' career and the error of joining a team of superstars, right? That's interesting to me. That is interesting to me, that he said something like that. Because obviously, yeah, that's the issue at City. You join a team that are built like they do, you can easily fade into nothing. You can easily fade into nothing. And again, this is one of the big reasons why I think we're going to win. This is why I think we'll get him, man. It's why. It's because when I look at it, I look at the situation and think he could be starting for us right now, and he can play in so many positions. And you look at again, with reference those reports from Fabrizio and what they've said, and it's like, we've presented such a strong project in terms of all the positions he can play, how he fits within the system, and how we always are going to have a place for them. If we end up switching to a system that's a straight four at the back with wingers, he's got a guaranteed role in that side. In our current side, he's got 5 positions. So it's just a better situation for him where he, like Mbumo, like Cunha, like our whole strategy right now, we're taking players who want to go to United to put themselves on the main stage and prove that they're the best in the Premier League. Not already established stars and things like that. And I think it fits what we want as well. Pep's, the uncertainty over Pep, all of those things I think do make a big difference for us. Could be quite huge at this point. So, I'm feeling very optimistic right now on it. And again, even though we haven't heard anything else new, I think I just feel good about it. I feel good about it right now. I really do. So that's Semenyo. I think there's not much to say about that. We'll wait till after the weekend, and then we'll talk about it again in a few minutes. In terms of the midfield, okay, I was just kind of waiting for this game to finish because I know a lot of people are coming on this front. Did I see Andy Mitten's article? Couldn't agree more. I think Andy Mitten's article's content doesn't quite match the headline, because his article pretty much says, of course, Amarim has the right to say everything he says. The thing I will disagree with on that, Cliff, by the way, is that his first comments weren't criticisms. That's all. I don't know why people call it attacks or criticisms, but he does. I think again, the idea that there's no reason for those critiques is that it sends a message to the rest of the club. That's why. So it has a very, very good reason. So I'll agree with some and disagree with others. But let's do it. Let's talk about this midfield. So the other day, just speaking of Andy Mitten, he said that we have some names, other names, interesting names that haven't come up yet, that haven't really been mentioned yet. And I have a feeling I know a few of them, but I said one that I have a feeling that I know that we've been looking at. And I said, I know that at least one of them is, I said at the time, in Madrid. And of course, where did everybody's head go to? Well, that's my fault because I've baited that many, many times previously. I've baited that in the past about the midfield, and also that we've been interested. But if you want, that was almost a goal from Tottenham right there in the dying seconds. If you only want, if you think about it, there you go. The name is actually Pablo Barrios at Atletico Madrid, somebody that United are interested in. And it's not Real Madrid, but Atletico Madrid. Pablo Barrios is somebody that United have watched. Not the only player over there, but yes, Pablo Barrios is definitely somebody United have at least watched in recent times. I think that from kind of catching up on it, he's somebody that people really like, that a lot of clubs rate around football, obviously. Not just United, obviously. I think City tried to buy him recently, and apparently he is absolutely tops. I can't say I've watched enough of him. I will now. I would have the idea that he is in the bracket of a top player in terms of everything, because I think City bid 80 million for him, and it was turned down. So we're talking about someone in the alternative bracket to Anderson, Baleba, Wharton, these expensive midfielders. So Baleba, for example, there's an article came from Jonathan Northcroft at the Times that says Brighton would like to hold out until 2027. And, and I think that's interesting, that because one of the things we've been worried about with Brighton, and even though I think Baleba wants the move, even though we would like the move, is that I think the worry has been that since his form has dipped, Brighton are now going to think, why do we have to sell? Our turnover is great. Our financial position is great. It is. We don't have to sell him. Why sell him at a discount? Why not sell him, give him another year to get back on his feet till he's tops again, and then get it with 100 million? You know what I mean? So that basically is a bit of a concern as to our ability to bring in Baleba, because that seems to be Brighton's stance on this. And that has been the concern for some time, is that their approach. And this report sort of confirms, or at least suggests, that it is. And Jonathan Northcroft at the Times is a very good journalist, by the way. Doesn't do a ton of transfer stuff, doesn't even do a ton of articles. He's done a few for us in the past that have actually been always 100% when he writes them. Very, very good journalist. So him saying that tells me that it's very likely, upon more discussion with Brighton's and inquiries and things like that, that they're essentially saying, nah, we're going to hold out till 2027. We just won't sell him at all. That's probably what they're saying. We're not even going to sell him next summer. On his current form, if clubs are coming in looking at 50, 60 million, which I believe United have come in and again inquired further and said, well, okay, look, the price we were talking about before, 65, 70 million, 60 million, surely he could be available for that now. He hasn't, surely he could be available. And it seems as though response from Brighton is, nah, we're just not going to sell him. They're well within, obviously, their rights to do that. And again, because of how much turnover Brighton do financially, they don't have to. So, I think that United would have hoped Baleba was still an opportunity, or they have another bad season at lowers again. That's a risk they're probably willing to take, but at the same time, I think with Brighton, they just don't care, I think from their sense, they sell and turn over so many players. There was that, you might remember the graph with the clubs as a percentage, their turnover as a percentage when it was related to these new rules and things like that. Weren't Brighton in like the top 3 with us? Because they sell so many young players for profit, because they're so good at flipping, and because they buy players for nothing and then flip them for huge amounts, they don't really worry about, okay, well, if this gamble doesn't work out, it's fine. We'll turn over and sell some other players and we'll make plenty of money. The fact is, it's true. They don't financially have to. There's clubs that they've got to sell some of these guys and they can't just sit on it. You know what I mean? But it seems as though Brighton are taking the approach of believing that he will become a top player in the future.
If City had a bid turned down for 80 meters, Barrera must be insanely good. No way we get him in January.
Yeah. Exactly. Agreed with that, by the way. It feels like Pablo Barrios is not one that we could bring in January, but certainly somebody that United are interested in. I don't think it's a January one, but I'm looking at big options. The article also says, of course, that Wharton could certainly come back into play in summer, right? It's Barrios, not Barrera, Barrios. But certainly that Wharton could come back into play in summer. Of course, he can. I would suggest still that Wharton is very likely to be more like, if Bruno leaves, we'll bring him in as kind of a Bruno replacement as well, in addition to another midfielder in that sense. But certainly United are casting their net a little bit wider, I would say, in terms of names and options and things than just the main guys, because we know the competition is going to be so fierce. If Brighton don't want to sell Baleba, if Wharton is only wanting Champions League, which is possible, if Anderson is desperate for Man City, which I don't know, I guess we'll see about that with Pep leaving. Maybe that changes. We've got to have backup plans, and that's of course the idea, but we've got to have backup plans that are good. We can't cheap out on the midfield. We can't go mediocre on this midfield rebuild. One way or another, we have to get a top player, and Barrios seems to fit in that mold as an option. I do have his stats pulled up here. Sorry for blinding you. But obviously, statistically, he looks a lot like, I guess you could say, Elliot Anderson, in the respect of being like an all-arounder who does like everything. You know what I mean? Like high duel winning, progressive passing, forward passing, great carrier of the ball. Like he seems to be a bit of an all-rounder as a midfielder. So certainly, that would make sense to say, well, if we really want to get a top midfielder in, we need to have more targets like this on our list. So we can't miss out. I mean, look, that's one thing for sure. If Brighton don't want to sell, or they're asking an insane price for Baleba, if Wharton, wants Champions League and we're not in it, and if Anderson goes somewhere else, if everybody's competing for Anderson, we've got to have more names. We've got to have more options. I am aware of at least a few more, but I want to check them out still, obviously. Someone like João Gomez, could he come back into the frame in summer? But again, I would take someone like João Gomez and say he's a very good second signing in the midfield. And I think there's a few names like that could come back into play in summer, but they're probably not your key players to rebuild this entire midfield, right? There's players like João Gomez, you're saying, yeah, as part of the rebuild, I think they would be great. But we need one of these really, 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 really good midfielders in this team right now. We have to have at least one like potentially world-class midfielder in there, to anchor this whole thing. That much is for sure. We've got to have it. So it's interesting that they're definitely looking at other names, and there's more potentially to come on that. I'm sure we will hear more in the future, but they're definitely expanding upon it. And, looking at these kind of top players out there, in addition to, of course, the ones in the Premier League. And there's others in the Premier League that they're interested in as well. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Obviously, it's far too early to know. It's hard to imagine that we could get any of these guys in January in terms of these top midfield options still. But at least we know now, I can say for sure, United are expanding upon that list and looking at potentially top midfielders, not just mid kind of options. As I'll have to watch more about him to form my own opinion, but I would certainly say that at least in terms of profile, cost, and admiration from other clubs, this is one of those ones where this is a big player in terms of the view of his quality around football. So that's pretty big. No, he's got a 500 million release clause, Daniel Barry, which is normal for Spain. He signed a new contract back in May. He's got that's normal. It's like they don't want a release clause that anybody can trigger. So yeah, it's not going to be a release clause type of thing. He may be impossible, but yeah, would signing Semenyo change the type of mid we would pursue? I don't think so. If they were going down a data-driven decision, they'd be writing off Baleba now. It's not that they're writing off Baleba, but obviously, again, it's about value, right? That's always been the issue here. I think they would have hoped that the form right now with him